Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a drama from the UK, English language, released in the year 2010, directed by Robert Kavanagh, and this film is called Pimp. So Pimp is a mockumentary about the seedy underworld of Soho in England. You've got this main character who is a pimp. He has to report to his very brutal boss, who wants money from the girls on the street and also the girls on the porn industry. So he goes on the street, he's doing his dealings, he goes to porn sets, he does his dealings, and he's basically explaining why he's doing what he's doing and what in his life led up to this specific moment. So one day he realizes that one of his girls has gone missing. Initially he thinks that the girl has tried to escape this life, so he wants to track her down and discipline her accordingly, but then he finds out that in fact she has gone missing and actually far more sinister things are taking place. So these very sinister things are related to his boss, and so he doesn't want his other girls to suffer a similar fate, so he's trying to protect them. But in turn he's starting to anger his boss to a point where things start to become very, very dangerous. So it's going to threaten to boil over and explode, and whether or not it does is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Pimp. I didn't have any expectations coming into this film. I didn't really have any real need to watch the film, but the reason why I wanted to watch it is because it has been panned by critics, and it has a terrible score in IMDb, but the reason why this movie had the notoriety that it did is because Mark Kermode. Now Mark Kermode is a British professional film critic who absolutely slammed this movie, and he made fun of Danny Dyer. Now Danny Dyer plays the crime boss in this film, and Mark Kermode said he made fun of him, he impersonated him, and this really angered Danny Dyer. So Danny Dyer came out in the press and said next time he sees Mark Kermode, he's going to punch him out. And so that was very funny to me. If you want to see the review of that specific, of Mark Kermode, I will leave it the link in the description below. And I thought, it's really funny to watch. And so for that reason, I wanted to see this film for myself to see how bad it was. And after seeing the movie, I will say that it does have some bright lights to it. But unfortunately, it is actually a pretty bad film. And I think part of the reason why it's so bad is because of Danny Dyer's performance. Now, if Danny Dyer can really defend himself against Mark Kermode's criticisms, then I think he's kidding himself, because he really doesn't belong in this type of role. And that's something I'll go into a little bit later. But what I liked about the film is that it did have a lot of grubbiness to it. I thought the atmosphere matched the themes that it was depicting. This is a world that's very misogynist, and a lot of people said that this is a film that reeks of misogyny. And I will say, yes, it does, and I think it needed to be, because it's basically about the sex trade. This is a society, this is an underworld society that the rest of us aren't really familiar with. And we get access into this world, and it's not a very nice world at all. And the actual grubbiness and the raw grittiness that the movie had as far as cinematography is concerned is intensified through the mockumentary style of film. It's kind of like a found footage film, and I think it really emulated the grubby atmosphere that Nicholas Winding Refn's The Original Pusher did. Now, The Original Pusher is a Danish film about the drug trade, and this is a world that we're not familiar with, and so that actually created something you don't want to be familiarized with. And so this movie has that same approach, is that this is a world you don't want to be a part of, and this is a very underworld, and so it's kind of like a secret society, and the way that this society plays out is a lot different from regular society, and so it needed to be a very misogynistic film. It's a movie that objectifies women. These women are not seen as human beings, and so they're just seen as a vessel for males to pleasure themselves. And I thought it was very disturbing in that point, and I thought it actually needed to be, because in this world, sex industry and the porn industry, it doesn't really see women in a very positive way, and so the film really doesn't do that. And I thought the interactions between male and female in this movie, I thought it needed to be the way it did. So it's a very provocative film, and it's a very explicit film as far as sex and violence is concerned, so be very careful going into it. But when you see a film called Pimp, you look at the trailer, you're not expecting something that's going to be very kind to females. So that's something I liked, and I thought the misogynistic sort of approach to this film helps contribute to the evolution of this main character. Now, surprisingly, the main character is the best part of this film, played by Robert Kavanagh, who also is director. I thought he plays the character at the start of the film. He's very cold and calculated in what he's doing. It's all about money, as I said, objectifying women. These women aren't human beings. But then he starts to second guess what he's doing. He starts to get a connection with one of these girls, and this is where the character starts to get a sympathetic quality. You start to feel as though this guy is a victim of circumstances, that he doesn't necessarily like what he's doing, but he has to do it to make a living. And basically it comes down to making a living. It comes down to making money. And this guy's making money in awful ways, but when he starts to second guess this, I started to feel, okay, well, I want to see how you get yourself out of this predicament. And so although the movie is not a terribly, satisfying experience, at least I was interested enough to see it to the very end, and I think the reason why is because of that specific character. So that was actually quite well done. And that was the biggest surprise of the movie, but unfortunately that is where the positives stop. Now, the biggest criticism, as I said, Danny Dyer, he plays the boss. Now, this guy, he portrays one of the most caricature villains you will see. The way he delivered his lines, this is where it really took me out of the experience. The first half of this film was fantastic. It had, as I said, the Pushers atmosphere. It was gritty, it was very brutal, very in your face, and I thought, okay, this is an uncomfortable experience. But then Danny Dyer starts to deliver some monologues. He starts to deliver with the other characters, and he's such a caricature villain that it takes you out of the experience. You're supposed to fear this guy, but it's like a small guy trying to be tough, and you're just laughing at his attempts. And that's exactly what I was doing. And when you see this very good character, the main character, acting as though he's scared of this boss, it doesn't come across as authentic, so it doesn't really work. And so as soon as Danny Dyer starts to come into the film, this is where it goes down a very caricature, theatrical approach. So the theatrics of the second half doesn't complement the raw grittiness of that mockumentary style of film that the first half had. And so when you go down these very generic formulas, it starts to go down a movie and you start to lose sense of that mockumentary. There's a lot of melodrama in the film that's trying to force the heartstrings, so that really didn't work as well. And so, yeah, as I said, you got two halves of the film. One half is really gritty, really downbeat and in your face, and then the second half is a movie, and this is where it goes down, as I said, very theatrical plots, and you've got this villain who just doesn't work and it just completely destroys the experience. So it's a very disappointing film, because I thought that Robert Cavanaugh had grounds to actually make a fairly memorable experience if he casted a better villain and he chose better, he made better decisions in that second half. And I thought the second half was just, as I said, it's a mockumentary. It doesn't have to follow a movie formula. It just has to follow day in, day out. But it unfortunately doesn't do that. It wants to make itself a little bit more tricky than it really should, and as a result of that, it really just falls apart by the end. So overall, for Pimp, definitely not coming recommended. I'm only going to give this one 1.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.